Hello everyone, myself Deepak Gupta, and in this session, in continuation to our last session taken on the sales variance, we will take up the sales margin variance, and we will take up this with the help of a question because that will help to understand the topic better. So before we take up the question, just we will discuss the basics first, and then we will take up the question. So when we discussed the sales variances, so why I'm talking of sales variances first? Because we will talk them in comparison to the sales margin variance. Or we should say that sales margin variances will be best understood when they are taught in relation to the sales variance. So the basic difference is the word margin. So actually the sales margin word denotes the profit. So we shall say that the sales margin or the profit will be equal to the sales price minus the cost price. So when we discussed the sales variances in our last session on standard costing, we said that there will be a budgeted sales, that is the sales which you have planned, which will be equal to the multiplication of budgeted quantity with the budgeted price, and that will be compared because that may not be equal to the actual sales, and that actual sales will be equal to actual quantity into actual price. We have stressed out in the last session that unlike the cost variances, there will not be any standard sales because in the cost variances we have to adapt to the budgeted cost of the budgeted output as per the actual output. So the budgeted cost has to be adapted with the actual output to arrive at the figure of the standard cost. But that is not the case with the sales because there is no adaptation. There can't be any adaptation here because what you have planned was the budgeted sales and what you have achieved is the actual sales, and the difference between the two denotes the sales variance, and that may have an impact on your estimated profits. But when you estimate the price, that is the budgeted price, then it must have been estimated on the basis of a standard price. That is the price that you have budgeted, you have planned, and on that you have estimated your budgeted sales margin. But when you achieve the actual sales, then it denotes that the actual price is actual price plus actual sales margin. But if we involve both the variations, then it will be the combination of the sales variance as well as the profit variance. So here we will presume that there is no variation in the price. We are presuming that whatever the cost price was there, whatever the cost price, because if we involve or if we change the cost price standard and change it with the actual cost price, then there will be involvement of the cost variances. So we presume that whatever is the standard cost has already been achieved. So we presume here that it will be the standard cost price here also. So whatever is the difference is due to the margin. So when we assume that, then we will focus only on what the margin you have planned and what the margin you have achieved. So the sales margin variances will be based on the assumption that there are no cost variances or cost variances have been ignored. So the budgeted sales margin shall be equal to the budgeted price minus the standard cost price, and the actual sales margin shall be equal to the actual price minus the standard cost price. And therefore, the standard cost price being same, so whatever is the difference in the sales margin is primarily because of the sales price. So as such, by character, the sales variance and the sales margin variance are similar. So, as we discussed in the last session, where the total sales variance was equal to the total sales volume variance and the total sales price variance, and the total sales variance was equal to total sales mix variance, which we use the word mix variance, and the total sales sub quantity variance. And the formula was that it was equal to the difference of actual quantity into actual price minus budgeted quantity into budgeted price. And it denoted what? That this was actual sales and this was budgeted sales. And then the volume variance was that actual quantity or budgeted quantity ka difference multiplied by the budgeted price, and this was the difference of actual price and the budgeted price multiplied by the actual quantity sold. And in these two variances, we developed the concept of revised standard quantity, which was equal to the budgeted quantity upon total budgeted quantity multiplied by the total actual quantity. And we are taking it in the light that you remember the last sessions, or conceptually it was what? The actual quantity in the budgeted proportions. So what is happening here, that the mix variance was equal to actual quantity minus revised standard quantity multiplied by the budgeted price or the standard price, and here it was equal to revised standard quantity minus budgeted quantity multiplied by the budgeted price. So this is how we discussed about the sales variances, and why I am writing it here, just to make the comparison that when we will do that in relation to the total sales margin variance, then they will be equal to actual sales margin minus budgeted sales margin. That is, it should be equal to actual sales margin multiplied by actual quantity. So we have replaced the actual price with the actual sales margin, and this will be equal to budgeted sales margin into budgeted quantity. So the difference between the two is only that you have replaced the price with the sales margin, and that is the difference of the price with the standard cost price, and that will be given in the question. So on the same lines, when this has been calculated, then to identify the reasons, it will be of two kinds: total sales margin volume variance and total sales margin price variance, we can say. Then on the same lines, it will be the difference of actual sales margin minus a budgeted sales margin multiplied by actual quantity, and this will be the difference of actual quantity minus budgeted quantity multiplied by the budgeted sales margin. Similarly, when we will calculate the sales margin variance volume, then it will be again of two kinds: total sales margin mix variance. This one was volume, this one was price, and then total sales margin sub quantity variance. Then on the same lines, this will be budgeted sales margin multiplied by actual quantity minus revised standard quantity, and it will be the budgeted sales margin multiplied by the RSQ minus PQ. So we will show it on the similar lines, and here you will find that total sales margin variance will be equal to total sales margin volume variance plus total sales margin price variance, and total sales margin volume variance will be equal to total sales margin mix variance plus total sales margin sub quantity variance. Okay. So now if we take up the question here, and we can always show it that when we calculate the sales margin variance, then we can calculate for each product separately and then join it, or we can collect it together, but all others will be calculated separately because they will have different quantities and different sales margins. So we will make up a table as we prepared in each of the variances discussed earlier from this question. So if you see here, if I prepare a table, तो आपको यहाँ पर ये सारे क्वेश्चंस के अंदर अगर ये कॉस्ट का डाटा ना दे रखा हो, तो मैं इस ये जो रेट है ये सेल्स प्राइस है, ये बजटेड रेट है और ये स्टैंडर्ड रेट है. दिस इज बजटेड प्राइस, दिस इज एक्चुअल प्राइस, दिस इज एक्चुअल क्वांटिटी, दिस इज बजटेड क्वांटिटी. तो अगर मैं कॉस्ट को इग्नोर कर दूं और ये वाली वैल्यूज यूज करूं, देन आई विल कैलकुलेट द सेल्स वेरिएंसेस. लेकिन अगर मैं इन कॉस्ट में से ये माइनस कर दूं, देन आई विल कैलकुलेट, यानी कि अगर मैं यहाँ लिख दूं बजटेड सेल्स मार्जिन, सो इट विल बी बजटेड प्राइस माइनस बजटेड कॉस्ट. और अगर मैं लिखूं एक्चुअल सेल्स मार्जिन, तो इट विल बी एक्चुअल प्राइस माइनस बजटेड कॉस्ट. यहाँ 4 माइनस 2.5 1.5 हो जाएगा, 3 माइनस 2.5 0.5 हो जाएगा, 0.6 माइनस 0.50 0.10 हो जाएगा. Similarly, 3 minus 0.5, sorry, 2.5, it will be 0.5. 3 minus 2.5 will be 0.5. 1 minus 0.5 will be 0.5. तो अगर इस क्वेश्चन में वेरिएंसेस निकाले जाएं 4 और 3 की वैल्यू से, देन वी विल यूज द वर्ड सेल्स वेरिएंसेस. और अगर निकाले जाएं इस वैल्यू से, देन वी विल यूज द word sales margin variance. Therefore, some books and some authors use the same word, that sales margin variance and the sales variances are one and the same thing. So here, if we use this table only, and if we calculate it here, before we move on, I just give you a minute that you remember these formulas of sales margin, so that with the help of these I can solve the question. Just for those who have raised hand for a time, they can just see the formula so that we can move on with the question. So I hope this is clear. You remember it. So if I move on here, so what will happen? यहाँ मैं इस स्टैंडर्ड क्वांटिटी को, तो मैं यहाँ एक इसको पहले मिटा देता हूँ। और एक कॉलम बनाता हूँ बजटेड सेल्स मार्जिन, दैट इज budgeted sales margin per unit into budgeted quantity. So this will give you total budgeted sales margin. So 1.5 into 200 will be 300. 0.5 into 300 will be 150. 0.10 into 500 will be 50. So this will become rupees 500. Then we will have actual sales margin, that is total, and that will be equal to actual sales margin per unit into actual quantity. So the actual sale margin is 0.5, actual quantity is 150. So this will become 75. 0.5 into 250 will be 125, and 0.5 into 600 will be 300. So if you will see, this will again come out to be 500. So total sales margin variance will be actual sales margin total minus budgeted sales margin total, and they both are coming to be same, so it will be nil. So here, in spite of the differences in the quantity and the sales margin, the total is coming out to be same, and hence the answer is nil. Now if I remove this earlier part a bit from here, so that we can solve the question and show it here only, because we have discussed that in our earlier sessions. So if I say total sales margin volume variance, what was equal to budgeted quantity minus actual quantity multiplied by the budgeted sales margin. So for product A, for product B, and for product C, the budgeted sales margin was 1.1, 0.5, and 0.10. The budgeted quantity is 200, 300, and 500. कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता कि हम पहले ए क्यू लिखे बी क्यू लिखे, मैं फिर भी कोई कंफ्यूजन ना रहे तो इसको चेंज कर देता हूँ। क्योंकि वेरिएंसेस सारे डिफरेंस से निकलते हैं, तो मैं यहाँ इसको चेंज कर देता हूँ, ए क्यू माइनस बी क्यू। तो ए क्यू में पहले 150 है, फिर 250 है, और फिर 650 है, और स्टैंडर्ड में 200 है, 300 है, और 500। So what is it is coming out to be that this is 75 adverse, this is coming out to be 25 adverse, and this will come out to be 15 favorable. So this basically it will come out to be 90 adverse. Similarly, if I calculate total sales margin price variance, this shall be equal to actual sales margin minus budgeted sales margin multiplied by the actual quantity. So for A, for B, and for C, the actual quantity was 150, 250, and 600. The actual sales margin was 0.5, 0.5, and 0.5. And the budgeted was 1.5, 0.5, and 0.10. You will see here that this will come out to be 150 adverse, this will come out to be 0, and this will come out to be 240 favorable. So you will see here that it will come out to be 90 favorable. And if you see that the total of the two is a 0, so it is proven that direct material, sorry, that total sales margin variance is equal to total sales margin volume variance plus total sales margin price variance, because this is 0, this is 90 adverse, and this is 90 favorable. This is 90 favorable. Now to arrive at the figure of mix and the sub quantity variance, we have to get RSQ. So if I calculate RSQ also here, that is कि जो टोटल क्वांटिटी है हेयर दैट विल कम आउट टू बी 100. तो जो प्रोपोर्शन है वो ए का 20% है, और जो टोटल एक्चुअल क्वांटिटी है दैट इज आल्सो कमिंग आउट टू बी 100. तो RSQ of A has to be 200. For B, that is this upon this into this अगर आप करेंगे तो टोटल चांस की बात है कि दो TSQ और TBQ सेम है, तो ये फिगर 300 होनी चाहिए और ये फिगर 500 होनी चाहिए. तो जब टोटल बजटेड क्वांटिटी और टोटल एक्चुअल क्वांटिटी सेम है, इन दैट केस जो budgeted quantity है that is equal to the RSQ. That is what is happening here. So what you will feel here कि अब आप जब यहाँ पर अब जो चीज मिटाई गई है उसको वीडियो में रिवर्स करके देख सकते हैं, इसलिए इसको यहाँ से मिटाया गया है. अगर इस क्वेश्चन को सबसे नीचे सॉल्व किया जाता तो फिर आपको बार बार ऊपर नीचे शिफ्ट करके देखना पड़ता, इसलिए यहाँ इसको इस क्वेश्चन में मिटाया गया है क्योंकि डाटा स्कैटर्ड है. तो अब जब यहाँ टोटल सेल्स मार्जिन मिक्स वेरिएंस निकला तो आपको यहाँ फॉर्मूला नीचे दिखाया गया, ये देखिए कि बजट सेल्स मार्जिन मल्टीप्लाइड बाय एक्चुअल क्वांटिटी, सॉरी दिस वन फॉर्मूला, बजट सेल्स मार्जिन मल्टीप्लाइड बाय द AQ माइनस RSQ. तो यहाँ पर ये क्या हुआ फॉर्मूला कि बजटेड सेल्स मार्जिन मल्टीप्लाइड बाय AQ माइनस RSQ. तो जो बजटेड सेल्स मार्जिन है यहाँ पर वो A का, B का और C का, वो 1.5 है, 0.5 है और 0.10. जो एक्चुअल क्वांटिटी है वो 150 है, 250 है और 650 है, और जो BQ है वही RSQ है, यानी कि 200, यानी कि 300, यानी कि 500. यू विल फाइंड हेयर कि जो ऊपर वाले फिगर्स हैं 75, 25, 15, ये फेवरेबल, ये एडवर्स और ये एडवर्स आ जाएंगी. ये फिगर एज इट इज 90 एडवर्स हो जाएगी. जब आप टोटल सेल्स मार्जिन सब क्वांटिटी वेरिएंस निकालेंगे which will be equal to budgeted sales margin multiplied by RSQ minus BQ, because they both are equal, ये सारी की सारी फिगर 0 आ जाएगी. You will find that total sales margin volume variance is equal to total sales margin mix variance plus total sales margin सब quantity variance, क्योंकि ये 0 है और ये 90 एडवर्स है और ये भी 90 एडवर्स था. सो वी कैन से दैट everything has been proved and correctly calculated, and that is how we calculate the sales margin variance. So I hope the session was of help to you. You can always revise and go in the back of the video and just confirm where you have any doubts. And even if you have any further doubts,